Dewunmi. Dr. Dewunmi. Hi, Doc.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
I'm good, thank you. Hello, everybody.
Try to find Dr. Dewunmi.
Hey, Tubosun, how are you? Long time no see.
Oh, is this your hair from Nigeria? Hello, Dr. Dewunmi. Welcome.
My Niger hair. Hi, Bukola. Hello.
Welcome. The two doctors in the house. Am I qualified to call myself a doctor since I'm married to a doctor?
You can. Doctor by doctor.
You're among friends, so it's all right. And besides, you're Nigerian. You can call yourself anything.
I can call myself anything. I remember once saying to someone that she should take some particular medicine. I said, listen, I know I'm a doctor's wife, so I know.
You go, girl.
Good to have you both here, Dr. Zion and Dr. Dewunmi. I don't know whether we should just quickly, for those who don't know you, because we might have new guests, new followers. So just briefly, just tell us what you do, please, and then we'll go on to. So, Dr. Zion Ekundari, please just quickly tell us what you do.
Okay, I guess basically, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a therapist, coach. What else do I do?
Mother.
Yeah, mother. What do I do? Do stuff on well-being. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and you have your own practice, private practice.
Yes, I have my own private practice. I work with Jesus House, and I also have my own private practice. So yes, I do that. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that. Don't ask me. Even though I tell people you should have it there. So even if they tap you from your sleep, you just come out with it. But sorry.
That's fine.
But thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dewunmi.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dewunmi. I work in what's called liaison psychiatry. That's psychiatry practice from the perspective of the general hospital in an A&E department. So I deal with the acute side of things, the first presentations, or when people have physical illnesses that also have they also have psychiatric conditions, or sometimes people with physical illnesses, not necessarily illness from the psychiatric perspective.
Okay.
But as you can imagine, when people have life-threatening, life-modifying conditions, they may come down with psychiatric problems. So I get called by the general hospital setting to go to see them. So people in ITU, people going through life-changing surgery, cancers, things like that. Okay. In addition to that, I did short study in medical law and ethics, not really doing much with it at the moment.
Right.
So I think part of my credentials is that I have failed in a lot of things, actually. So if people want to learn how not to fail, I'm the right person to talk to. Not because I've succeeded, but because I failed.
Do you know, it's funny you mentioned this, because I posted something yesterday that maybe something that along the lines of maybe it's your failure that actually qualifies you. So yeah,
I think so, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, now you say it too. That's one of the things I feel is very important too. That one of the ways a lot of parents have failed this generation is not allowing them to fail. It's always being there to catch them. So, these are part of what's contributing to some of the challenges that we're dealing with today. So it's good to fail.
It's good to fail because you learn from.
You learn.
Yeah.
Make you strong.
Yes, and I guess that's how you also build resilience.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the concepts that's come with COVID. Trusts are now doing resilience training for staff.
Yep.
And one of the things I used to comfort myself sometimes, I'm not saying that I couldn't have done certain things better.
Yeah.
But I say that maybe not failing might just mean that you have not tackled big enough challenges. So.
Yeah. Do you know, it's interesting we started talking about resilience because it's something that has been on my mind, I guess, but it will be for another hangout session. Especially, I actually, I was thinking, how can you teach resilience? How do people develop resilience? It's something that I really would love for us to explore, but probably for another hangout session. But I guess, again, something you may want to talk about during our session today. So guys, let me tell you a little bit about why we decided to have this session today. It's because over the last few months, especially, I've heard and I've come across so many people who are going through mental issues. And please, when we say mental issues or mental sickness or whatever, we're not, because a lot of people on the call are probably Nigerians, we're not saying people have gone mad, we're just saying like mental illness. It's like another, like any other illness that anybody can have. But we'll say, and they will tell you, the doctors will tell you that there's been an increase, particularly during the COVID. But the interesting thing now that has happened, in fact, when we said we're going to do this, we didn't know they were going to open up the UK especially. The thing now is, from next week, it's like they've removed most of the restrictions. And they're saying, get on with life. Everybody should learn to get on with life. But then how do we get on with life when we've been locked up for two years? Well, almost 2 years. And the pandemic, the what's it called? COVID is still out there. How do we start to deal with life? So, Dr. Zion and Dr. Dewunmi, please help us. Just help us. We need help. I need help.
I think yes, I like the fact that Pastor Funke, that you mentioned the issue of the definition and letting people know that this is not pathologizing or trying to say that trying to talk about stigma. We are talking here about things that could happen to everybody. So when we talk about the emotional burdens, the mental health issues that come with COVID, we are not talking about things that necessarily put people in hospital, but something that we all experience, every single one of us. I mean, how do we define emotion? Emotion is simply our intuitive feeling, our inner feelings deriving from our circumstance, our mood, our relationship with others, how we interface or interact with our environment. That is what emotion is. In some people, it can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be joy, it can be happiness, it can be exhilaration, so it's about how we feel. Now, we've gone through a period where for more than 18 months, actually I think 20 months now, because it should be 24 months. 20 months, it should be 24 months in late March. So we've gone through 20 months of being locked up, locked in. And then suddenly we woke up to an announcement that says, hey, go back, throw your masks away, throw everything away, start hugging each other, start jumping at each other, and do whatever you are doing normally. Now, the question is this: how do we do that? We know that COVID is still out there. We know people are still dying from it, maybe not as much as before. We know the infection is still out there. So what has informed this new decision? How do we go about it?
Before we actually start to talk about that, can we talk about some of the issues that are actually mental issues that are going on that people have now? Before we talk about the...
Yeah. I think Dr. Zion and I sought to have a conversation yesterday, but I guess we both had busy days and it didn't really last up to 10 minutes. But I think one of the things we identified was fear, anxiety, bereavement, isolation, job loss, loss of employment, loss of income. And those are the common things. And then if you extend it, you discover that there has been increased consumption of alcohol. Younger people have taken up things like smoking and drugs use. Strangely enough, more older people have given up smoking. I guess because they see COVID as a respiratory disease.
Oh, I see.
A respiratory condition, and how smoking can make it worse or make people more susceptible to it. So some people, quite a few of the older people have given up smoking. But the younger people, unfortunately, have taken it up. So there's, sadly also, we have seen increased separation, marital conflicts.
In fact, I've said that any marriage that survived the COVID, then by God's grace of God, they'll go strong for a few more years. Because I think a lot of marriages were probably tested during this lockdown.
We have seen increased suicide, and this is not. I'm just listing people conditions for which people walk into A&E. We've seen increased suicide behavior, attempts at self-harm, suicide, things like that. We've seen increased suicide behavior. We've seen more increased domestic violence. And in all of these things, what we've seen is that it has made people with existing issues, it's worsened existing mental illness. It's also provoked mental illness in people who are prone personality-wise. So existing or underlying medical conditions have become worse. It's triggered new illness. It's provoked things like delirium, dementia in the elderly, because the fear, the stress, the hormones that the body produces in response to fear, in response to anxiety, in response to stress, have made people become worse. People have been afraid. There's money issues there. We've seen companies close down. We've seen offices shut down. Staff are working from home. We don't realize that there are people who make their living cleaning those offices every morning. They are the people whose job it was to clean those offices. They are the people who supplied food, who worked in the cafeterias, who worked in the, so a lot of job losses have taken place. We talk about how we go to Tesco, they are now talking about contactless or unmanned supermarkets. Well, those machines are replacing Auntie Mabel's job. Those machines are replacing Auntie Clara at the till. So these are things that have happened. So there have been gains and there have been losses. So apart from one or two things, I can't really see much that I can say by way of gain in this lockdown season. I think I'll leave it there. Maybe questions later will awaken other areas. Dr. Zion might want to make a contribution here.
Dr. Z.
No, but remember there was one game we were talking about. I don't know if anybody saw that article that Rolls-Royce said they hadn't sold as many cars as they have over the period of the pandemic. And they were speculating that maybe people who are very wealthy are realizing that, are staring at their mortality and thinking, wow, I spent some of this money, So they, interestingly, all these luxury brands have been, experiencing higher sales because things that people normally wouldn't, reach out to, they have gotten. Now, of course, again, as we all know, a lot of people have made a lot of money from this pandemic. So I guess from that perspective, there have been gains for those people. But, just to echo what Dr. D said, I think for me, what I've experienced is a lot of uncertainty. It's that sense of uncertainty, that sense that, the world as I knew it has changed. I don't even know. I don't understand. I don't know how to navigate this crazy world we're in now. And so I have personally experienced, I guess, in the kind of work I do, a lot of people just, suffering with uncertainty, suffering with, the anxiety that brings, the helplessness, the hopelessness, where they just think, what am I doing? Everything I knew is being shaken. Every single thing I knew, it's like all the pillars that I could I felt I could lean on, apart from Jesus, of course, they've all, if they're not straight, they're shaking. We've had lots of I guess, millennials who have found that they've had to start supporting their parents. Because the truth is, with this pandemic, if you want at a certain financial level of stability, this pandemic has plunged quite a lot of people below the poverty line. So people who are just ticking along nicely have suddenly found everything has changed, and suddenly children are coming on their parents' mortgages. Children are having to, we Africans, we like to say that, no, my children live with me, I pay all the bills. They're having to say, sorry, you're going to have to help me a bit here because we can't sustain this lifestyle that we've had. Because without realizing, everything has just crept up. They were saying then that, during the pandemic, when we had the fuel shortages, the price of fuel went up. And they said because there was a shortage. The shortage ended and the price didn't really go down. The price has never gone back to normal. So stealthily, things have just increased. You just found that the things that you could do, you can't necessarily do them anymore. So a lot of parents, a lot of younger people have found that suddenly they're having to contribute to, and they're like, okay, here am I wondering if I can ever afford a mortgage. I'm wondering if I'll ever be able to afford a place. And suddenly now, the little I have, these people are taking it off me again. So there's just been so much going on that, it's enough to I mean, apart from obviously the obvious ones that Dr. D spoke about in terms of jobs and that sort of thing. So
it's interesting, as you was listing all those things, I was thinking, my goodness, it's a lot. It is a lot. And people have gone through and probably still going through all of these things. So, what is the way forward? What can people do? How can we help ourselves?
I think there isn't going to be an easy answer to that. And I will tell you why I say so. This announcement was made on Wednesday. Since that announcement to open up was made, I have found myself asking myself one or two questions. That in our church, in the church where I attend, Jesus House, last Sunday, the senior pastor was talking about people returning to church. He was very much unlike him. He was making this very passionate appeal to people to return to church, as if he knew that something was going to happen. And in returning to church, it means more interactions. It means, and one of the things we haven't really talked about is, what were the emotional burdens? What were the things that we lost in the pandemic? One of the things we lost in the pandemic was social interactions. Was children started to suffer from isolation, from they became socially de-skilled. They say, devil finds work for the idle hands. So we saw children who are now using things and abusing things and all that. there is also more screen time. People were spending more time on screens and all that for people who can afford it.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, when the pandemic first started, they said people were being homeschooled and they were supposed to log. Parents who didn't have food at home, you are expecting them to have money to buy data to. Do they even have iPads, let alone, so lots of things. So we have to promote better social interactions. We have to re-engineer society. We have to overcome the anxiety that people will be feeling in returning to church, in returning to interactions. And we shouldn't just do it gung-ho the way the government did it. Personally, I will say that I'm still going to keep my masks on.
Yeah.
They say, oh, you don't have to wear masks on public transporting. If it's not going to affect anybody, as much as possible, I would say people should keep their masks on.
I think on London transport is still going to be compulsory, I think.
It's still going to be compulsory, and I think it's compulsory. Well, in the hospitals, it's compulsory anyway.
Okay.
They say we still have to keep masks on in the hospital, and not just keep it on. We are actually, if you go from one ward to another ward, you change your mask.
Okay.
So those cloth masks are not allowed. It has to be the disposable ones. So,
sorry, Dr. Dewunmi, before you continue, I just want to ask the audience a question.
Yes.
You guys, is anybody feeling anxious about the restrictions being lifted? Just let us know. We'd like to know. And then also, talking about this isolation, I think we were talking the other day about babies born during the pandemic, how they find it difficult to relate to anyone outside of their home. So again, did anybody have a part? I know I've seen that pandemic baby, but I don't like it at all. I don't like that pandemic baby. But did anyone have a child during the pandemic? And you can just type in your just let us know how your child is reacting to being outside of the home environment. Just let us know. Daniel, what do you mean by it's a bit premature? Or you mean the government lifting the ban?
Lifting the ban.
Okay, lifting the ban, yeah.
I think it is, and I think at the risk of sounding political, I think it was designed to just distract our attention. But we are here, we are where we are, so we just have to get on with it. I would say we have to find a way to promote safe social contacts, not social distancing now, but social contacts. We have to develop hobbies on a personal level. We must create hobbies for ourselves. We must do more of arts, crafts, sports, leisure, prayers, playing music, listening to music, gardening, baking, and find time to sleep. Find time to pay attention to good sleep.
Yeah.
These are all things that help the brain to relax, because one of the things we are going to experience now, as we did at the beginning of the pandemic,
yes.
The WHO Director General used the term infodemic, where everybody became experts, everybody, and all sorts of
University of
nonsense were
WhatsApp
being shared on social media. And it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
A lot of experts are now coming out. In fact, one newspaper headline yesterday said the government has ignored science. As much as I know that I don't think we got to the point of the lockdown in one stage, and we shouldn't come out of it in one movement.
Yeah.
But we are where we are as a group on a personal level. Let's do more exercise. Let's get fitter. Not that we want to become mini Schwarzeneggers, but at least let's get fitter. Let's start. But by all means, whatever anyone does, I will advise that even if you work in environments where you're allowed to continue to work from home,
yeah,
find a way to at least go to the office once or twice. You know, we are not created to isolate. The isolation has had very detrimental effects on people's mental health. And the quicker we return to normalcy, the better. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Melissa, for letting us know that you're a bit anxious. Yeah, people will let their guards down. Yeah, that's probably that. Yeah, that probably will happen. Okay, Dr. Z. Hi,
yeah, sorry. I was busy saying hi to my two girls. Both my daughters are on to support their mama. Yeah. So yeah, what was I going to add to that? I was going to say, you know, I think this lifting of all the, I guess, restrictions is an interesting concept. But I think what I have said to the few people I've had this conversation with is, don't bother, you know, don't trouble yourself too much about what the government is doing. The interesting thing about this government is that all through this pandemic, they've said one thing, but the underlying theme has been, take care of yourself, you know, make decisions that work for you. Yeah. You know, if you know you have underlying conditions, keep yourself safe. You can't rely on anybody else to keep safe. So I think all I want to do is highlight the fact that be responsible, you know, don't just get excited and go with the flow. They've lifted the restrictions, and that's okay for, I guess, a lot of the, you know, the population who believe that they're hale and hearty and who feel that they can do that. But if you know that for any reason you need to, you know, be a bit careful, continue to be careful. You know, there's nothing stopping you from wearing a mask. There's nothing stopping you from, I mean, we've all learned to wash our hands. You know, I guess the people selling hand cream must have made a fortune also during this pandemic. Let's keep washing those hands. Let's keep, you know, we've all learned to stop putting our hands in our mouths. I mean, I thought I was being very, very careful. I went abroad, I came back, I was home for the better part of almost 2 weeks because the day 2 test, my day 2 COVID test just didn't arrive. Okay. Eventually arrived, but I chased it, eventually arrived maybe like on day 10. I did the test, it came back negative. I went out. So you can imagine during those 10 days, I think I only walked down to the you know, the supermarket at the end of the road. Couple of days later, what did I do? I came down with symptoms of COVID. So you know, the point is, you know, there's no hard and fast. There's no magic way to do it. We just have to continue to be sensible and remember that there's still something going on out there. You know, what has kept us going all this time for most of us for the past 20 months has been the grace of God and the little we could do. So we just keep holding on to that grace of God and doing the best we can. If we look at history says that when they had the last big pandemic, I think it was the Spanish flu, the one that was 100 years ago, they said it took about 5 years for the world to go back to normal. They said it took about 3 years for people to start having confidence to go out again. Yeah. And obviously they didn't have all the technology that we have now. So I think for me, even that just, you know, lays a foundation of, you know, the fact that people are going to be cautious, people are going to be careful, you know. So, you know, if we survive this long, I think we should be grateful to God and just say, look, what I've done, let me just carry on and just do my best to, you know, to keep myself as safe as possible going forward. That's just my little.
Thank you. Sorry, before you go on. Sorry, Dr.
May I just add something quickly that in looking at what we do, I think we should also look at it in terms of different demographic groups.
Okay.
The group for which I harbor some fear or some anxiety at this point are the adolescent and young adult groups. Okay. The Americans will call them the college students or the university age. That is the group I harbor anxieties for.
Why?
That is the group that felt most shackled.
Okay.
During the lockdown.
Right.
They started to do university from the confines of their homes. many couldn't even stay home with their parents because the restriction was too much. They still went back to university even though classes were online.
Yeah.
And they had periods of no interaction. Some suffered because access to internet and resources were sort of limited. The ones who went back to university went because they just wanted to be away from home, not necessarily because they were enjoying it. Exams were postponed, graduations were postponed, those things. That is the group that is more likely to throw caution to the wind. I have two nieces who went recently to the O2. They said some fellow from Nigeria was singing. And I think the crowd was so much, they were literally, whiskey, yes, they were literally spitting in each other's faces. The more people broke into the venue than were already in the venue. The place was damaged, and this is the group that's more likely to look at this as, oh, freedom at last. And the way the government has opened up sort of fits the conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. Those people who always said, oh, there's nothing like COVID is a lie.
Yeah.
It sort of fits because it's almost as if, oh, so did somebody just say, yeah, COVID, get out? Mm-hmm. That they are opening up right away. So but we still have to be cautious. And it's different measures for each group. Like I mentioned earlier, what we are going to do with the elderly, the reassurance for the elderly is there. The reassurance for the young children, the things we are going to have to tell them, because the government said they don't have to wear masks in classrooms, it is there. The older, the college university group is a different measure. Health workers is a different measure. And there's going to be a lot of repair going on in relationships, marriages, homes, the way we relate to each other.
I think if I was even going to add something to that, when we were talking about the social isolation and, the young people, immersing themselves in this virtual world, I think for me, the challenge is how we're going to wean these children off this virtual world and wean them back into reality. When Facebook, or should I say Zuckerberg, when they started talking about the metaverse, my heart clenched. I said, oh my gosh, we're going to have even more problems, more split personalities, people not losing this total control of this total grasp on reality, where you have people living one life in the metaverse that has absolutely no bearing on the reality that they're dealing with, which we're already seeing in small measure in social media already. But now it's like we're actually creating a new world for them to exist. But somehow they have to have their feet grounded in this world. So for me, these are the things that I find a bit troubling, that we're trying to, as Dr. D said, we're trying to get people back into schools. We're trying to get people back into church. We're trying to get people back dealing with one another, talking to one another, going to shops, going to visit grandma, going for walks in the park, having parties again. Not in a whiskey concert kind of way, but at least controlled interaction. But we're giving them another option of drifting further away from reality. And I'm thinking, is this the next pandemic we're going to be dealing with, in the future in terms of mental health? So I worry about that, and I think I want to lend my voice to Dr. D that somehow, especially with young people, we're going to have to make a concerted effort to keep them grounded or to pull them back into the real world.
Talking about young people, I know also that when we had our discussion, we talked about a rise in the number of young people. Actually, let me use the word losing it over the last few months. Suicide rates amongst the young people has also increased. So what do we do? how can we help them? How can parents even start to help? Parents, guardians, how can they even start to help the young adults and the younger? I think the one that actually broke my heart was a few weeks ago when I saw online that a 6-year-old girl tried to commit suicide. I mean, that actually broke my heart. A 6-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, at 6. So what can parents do?
I think, we parents are going to have to really talk to ourselves, and put the young people in our lives first.
Okay.
I guess for a lot of us, we have challenges too that we're dealing with. Our jobs are also at risk. Our finances are shaky. All the things that the young people are experiencing, we're experiencing them too. And we don't have the vigor of youth or the luxury of, fresh opportunities, to suddenly say that 60, what job am I mean, approaching 60, looking at our 60s, what new jobs do we want to suddenly start doing? The whole world has become millennial, as it were. Yeah. But in spite of all of that, we have to invest time in these children. We have to draw them back, because everything out there isn't going to draw them back. We have to draw them back. We have to engage with them. We have to talk to them. We have to allow them to express themselves. We won't necessarily give a solution, because I know from my job, from being a parent myself, that sometimes you don't have the solution. It's not like you can't certainly make everything perfect, but you can talk to them. You can, let them, engage with humanity. You can help them to understand that we still need one another. Yeah. I know during the pandemic, one of the challenges I used to have was every time my daughter wanted to go out, I'd be like, oh no, she's going out. But there was also a voice of, of reason on my other shoulder saying, you can't be afraid. She has to keep talking to people. She has to. And then she told me, she said, Mom, if I keep saying no to every invitation, nobody will invite me anywhere. And I had to recalibrate my brain and say, you know what? This this young lady still has many more years to live, and has to re-engage with this world. So she has to go out. She has to maintain those relationships with her friends. She has to, keep doing the things she needs to do. So, sometimes it would be like I was this crazy mother who would agree to go and drop her somewhere because I didn't want her to go on the train, but I felt it was important for her to relate with friends and be able to meet up with friends. Yeah. Those are things that I think we're going to have to really push. We're going to, that little bit of extra effort. Come to church with me, where are you going? Let's go shopping together. Come with me. Let's go to the supermarket, let's go to Costco together. Let's go and visit Uncle this. Let's go and visit. We're going to have to do those things with them and just, try and get them off those phones, get them off that Netflix, get them to, because between watching Netflix and going to a party, yes, watching Netflix keeps your child safe, but going to a party is probably they're interacting, they're learning to want to be with people again. So I think that's probably, for me, I think that's one step that we can.
Dr. Zaya, someone just asked that when the parent, I know you mentioned it, so when the parent needs help, how can you help someone else when you yourself you need help?
Then you look for help.
You look for help.
Because at least parent, you know that you need help.
Yeah.
So go out, look for the help. Find that person to talk to, find that therapist, find Dr. D, find somebody, that you can get it off. You can speak out your own fears. I always say the thing about therapy, people tend to think that therapy is magic. It's going to suddenly solve the problems. It's suddenly going to give you some aha, I talk to someone, it's going to, no, but it's going to help you to deal with it. It's going to help you to handle it. It's going to help you to slow down, calm down, switch off the fear, switch off all the rush of emotions that are just messing with your mind, to actually sit down and be able to think through, how can I help myself? And even if I can't, how can I remain strong as I navigate through this? Because, everything ends. Every single thing ends. No matter how big the challenge is, this inflation, it will go down eventually, so.
Can I just add that when you were talking, it's interesting that person asked that question. as you were talking, the image that flashed across my mind is when you are in an aircraft and they say that should the oxygen mask drop down, put yours on before you help another person.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, we are damaged ourselves. In this pandemic, I suddenly went from somebody who saw myself as young to somebody who people started to regard as head of family. I mean, I was shocked when somebody called me Olori Ebi, head of family, one time like that. I was like, who is she talking to? You know, because we had a few bereavements in the family. There's the guilt that comes from that. You see, before we can help the young, we are damaged ourselves. We had a few bereavements, not necessarily COVID, one or two unexplained that may have been COVID related. I don't know. But all I know is that because of travel restrictions, you cannot, during COVID, you could only take maximum of 10 days from work. The period of isolation on either side, if you travel, is 10 days each way. So I could not go. You carry that guilt with you. You carry that guilt. Could I have done more? Did I try? Did I put pressure on my employers? Oh, uncle this, auntie that did so much for me. I should have been at their funeral. Those things I still carry. Apart from that, we have a mayor who saw COVID as an opportunity to just make more money out of us. We are now going to go back to work. Many people don't have cars that are ULEZ compliant. We now have more of a, I mean, it was like during the period, an invisible border came up in London. I have friends in South London I have not been able to visit. I've not been able to go to see them. I have relations I have not been able to visit. Elderly relations I could not visit because coming straight from the hospital, and unfortunately they all for some reason happen to live in the East London area. So I could only visit them coming straight from work. You can't visit them because you know you are coming from contaminated environment. You don't want to take the, you know, so a lot is happening. There's also job losses. There's, now that the opening up is taking place, I guarantee you it's not rocket science. I'm not an economist, but I know that a lot of the money that went on dodgy contracts and failed PPEs and all the spending that went on, the financial losses to industry, all of it is going to be recouped. You and I will pay more tax. You and I will pay more NI. You and I will pay more for everything. Somebody loaned me a leaf blower to blow leaves in the garden. And I thought, oh, I took a can, you know, this petrol can. Normally £4.50 petrol will fill it. And I, that thing, I put £8 and it was not full. It shows you prices have gone up. Everything is going up. And these are the things we have to deal with. The young people we are talking about, they don't know these things. They have needs. You don't want to put them at disadvantage. You don't want to create unequal access to facilities when they go back to school, when they go back to university. You want to give them the best, but your pocket is crying. Interest rates will go up. These are the issues. Then, Dr. Zion, you talked about your fears when your daughter wants to go out. Health anxiety is there. We sort of mentioned it earlier. Health anxiety is real. And health anxiety is this, I mean, in the beginning of the pandemic, we had the a misinterpretation driving health anxiety, this catastrophic misinterpretation of our bodily sensations. Everybody that coughed thought they had COVID. You know.
Even now, even up to now.
Yeah, we are in the flu season. If somebody, I mean, there's that clip that went around on WhatsApp where somebody wanted a seat on a crowded train and they started coughing. And when everybody moved away, the guy sat down. So, I mean, we can laugh about it, but there's health anxiety is real.
Yeah.
You know, so these are all the things. We have all been overspending. We overspent on sanitizers. We overspent on masks and all sorts of things. It's payback time. So we have our worries. The adults are going to be faced with the economic hardship. We want to make sure the young have access to things. But there is no greater way to deal with this issue than what Dr. Zion said, which is about sit around the table. We have to talk more.
Yeah.
I will say to people, if you don't have to join a gym, don't join a gym. Pastor Bajo once said that there's a gym outside everybody's house. The pastor in my local church said there's a gym outside everybody's house. It's called the walkway. It's called the curb. Take a walk around. Families can walk together. You can interact. And I think we should do more of that. That's just my humble contribution to it.
Thank you, Dr. Dewunmi and Dr. Zion. Okay, someone asked the question. If a young person doesn't want to go out and you can't force them and they don't want to talk to their parents as well, despite the parents' effort, what do you do?
Number one, you pray.
You do
Number
it
two,
yourself.
you bring the people in. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to go out. Everybody has that friend that has children that are or brother or sister. I guess it just means that we now start to have to, I mean, Pastor F, you and I, we know each other. Yeah. Our children kind of, they're friends. They talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
If my daughter refused to talk to anybody and you came to my house, I invited you and your children to my house for lunch, she may not talk to me, but she will talk to TV and Tubo.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
It's being creative. It's being creative. Bring, how can we do? Let's try to think outside the box, Try and find out in their lives, their friends, in school, their parents. I know it sounds crazy arranging what is in essence a play date, but we might have to become that extreme to start arranging those things for their sanity, because you see, when they talk when you bring, if you bring your children, if I invite you and your children to my house, they're not just going to talk about, hello, how are you? Mm-hmm. They're going to talk about their jobs. They're going to talk about work. Those things that they can't talk to us about, somehow it's going to slide out in their conversation, Somehow they're going to start texting. Somehow they'll start interacting. So it may seem like a very little thing, but, it can, and I think these days, any little thing helps. Any little bit helps. It's just, let's just start it and keep going. And as as everybody knows, the first step to dealing with a challenge is awareness.
Yes.
Once we have the awareness, the opportunities, it lends itself for us to see opportunities. So when we're aware, we can then take advantage of those opportunities, I guess.
And as you were talking, I just thought sometimes, when we say they don't want to talk, maybe it's also the way we want to get them to talk to us. So it's not just, sit down. So what's going on? Sometimes it might be just engaging them in doing things around the house, or let's cook together, let's make this together. Remember when we used to bake? Oh, I've not done that in a while. Can you help me? Or just something, but engaging them. Most times they won't just come out and say, oh, this is going on in my life. You have to be creative, like you said, creative in engaging them in conversation. Dr. Dewunmi, do you have anything else to contribute?
I was just wondering that when a young person says they don't want to go out and they become resistant to all entreaties or manipulations to go out or encouragement, it's a function of time. I think the parents should then keep a careful watch and see how long it lasts. It's not just going out. What else have you observed? Any change in behavioral patterns? Any change to their eating pattern? Any change to their sleep pattern? Any change to their personal hygiene, their interactions, any loss of interest in hitherto enjoyable or pleasurable activities. That is, if the person was, oh God, I don't know the more modern things that people watch, but Game of Thrones or whatever they watch, if they have suddenly lost interest in those things, if they were the kind of person that would watch such cribs on MTV or something, and they suddenly lose interest, if they are spending more time in their bedrooms, if any of these things begin to last longer than 2 weeks, I think you need to talk to somebody.
So be aware of what's going on in their life.
Yes, and you need to just give reassurance. And please, that 2 weeks, I just borrowed it from somewhere. It's not scientific. It's scientific, but it's not rigid.
Okay.
It's not rigid, but you expect if somebody is going through anything emotionally, that anything, whatever it is, whether grief, anxiety, whatever, that the body's natural mechanisms would have recovered in 2 weeks. If, however, the person has not recovered in 2 weeks, it begins to suggest that there might be something more underlying. And that underlying thing is not necessarily an illness. This is where counseling, psychology, psychotherapy can come in. So I think that's the way we should look at it. I mean, yeah.
And parents.
Unfortunately, I had an eye on the clock, and I was realizing that there's a few areas that we have not reached, but unfortunately, we can't finish all of these things in one day. That's
you know, this thing, we could go on and on and on. But if you could, both of you, before, I mean, we can do another extra 5 minutes or so. Just touch on areas that at least things people can take away today and start to work on in regards to all the things we've talked about today. And thank you for those that said parents shouldn't give up. Just keep going, be present. Yes, that's true. Don't give up. Never give up.
I will say be present, starting from there. This, in the lockdown season, children have had reduced social interaction, less physical activities, more loneliness, longer screen time, boredoms. They've experienced social isolation. These are the things as parents should help them to tackle. School disruptions have taken place. Some children, unfortunately, have witnessed domestic violence. They've witnessed parents shouting at each other, being irritable at each other. As much as possible, parents should try to do these activities, taking walks together, going to the park together, going shopping together with the children. And I'm talking about both parents together. We need to sell them a different image. We need to let the children know that when they were doing classes and they were doing church or they were doing Zoom parties, that social networking are created to sell images that are not exactly reality to anyone. We put up appearances when we go on social media. You know, one of the perverted things that happened in the lockdown was this thing about challenges online.
Oh yeah.
Where some people were coming up with these very disturbing things. And you see, and that will only come when children are not mentored by their parents. So it's time to resume our space in the lives of the children.
Sorry, Dr. Dewunmi, when you talk, I just thought about something. Sometimes we know parents are busy, especially with younger children. And sometimes I guess for people with younger children, it's easier to put the iPad in front of the child you know,
Yes.
than to actually engage the child. Because I'm busy, or whilst you're doing that, I'll be doing other stuff. But it doesn't help at the end of the day.
It doesn't help.
Because they
And
get
that's
addicted to it, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because the images they see on those iPads, and also they now get to the stage where they even start to compare their iPads and how new their iPads or iPhones are with each other. And that sends the wrong message completely. It increases anxiety in them. It promotes sense of unworthiness and things like that. So parents need to regain their space. They need to resume their space.
I love that. Parents need
to. It does not
regain
have
this.
to be.
I love that.
Yeah, we need to regain that space. Yeah. And it's not about spending money. It's not about joining exotic gyms. It's not about, now that people can fly, it's not about flying first class. I mean, we are talking about what we are talking about here in the UK society. Yeah. I mean, before this program, Dr. Zion and I shared an article where, as a result of the pandemic, Uganda and many nations across the world witnessed a lot of teenage pregnancies.
Yes, yes.
You know, during the period, because for children from poor homes in nations where schools were funded by charities, the funding stopped when the schools were on lockdown. Children were forced to go and work as farm hands and maids and all sorts of things. Many could not return to school when things reopened. One country actually recorded about, I think, 45,000 teenage pregnancies.
Wow.
I mean, these are children.
Wow.
Teenage pregnancies, 45,000, all from exploiters, not their peers, from exploiters. So these are some of the damages. So we have to set about correcting the damage of the lockdown, but in doing so, we have to be cautious about doing it. And I guess the church has to, and Dr. Zion have to now start looking at about the domestic issues, the domestic conflicts that have taken place, the separations, the anger, the resentment, people being in each other's spaces, couples who were not used to, sometimes even the fear of contamination was used as an excuse for perpetuating violence on children and on spouses. You went out, you didn't wash your hand, and it just causes all sorts of things. I have seen that where the fear of contamination was the excuse that the abuser used. People have lost their jobs. They are less likely to report their abuser because of codependence. The UK helplines witnessed 25% increase in calls to domestic violence helplines. The US witnessed 35% increase in calls to domestic violence helplines. The UK had 75% increase in online searches for domestic violence helplines, which led somebody to actually write that the home is not necessarily a safe place for everyone.
Sure.
So there's a lot of repair that we can do. Wow. If I was to give one take-home comment, I will say people should return to church.
Okay.
You see, that act of going to church together on Sunday as couples, as whatever, helps to set a tone for the week, and it makes us do something together. So if we can do it, let's return to church, let's return to activities, let's return to places of support, places where we go to. Let's shop together. Let's, that's all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dewunmi. Dr. Zion, what's your take home?
Oh, I had written here, I wrote talk, engage, connect, We grown-ups, let's make ourselves vulnerable, Let's learn to start making ourselves vulnerable to ourselves, How can I, if it's when I make myself vulnerable to you, Pastor F, and I tell you what I'm really going through, that's when you can really help me. And maybe then you will be able to share with me what's going on with you, and we can help one another, we can support one another, and then we can take it home, bring it home, to our husbands, our wives, make ourselves vulnerable, tell them, and even our children, let them know what we're going through, so that they won't even just think that we're making high-handed, crazy decisions. Let them, not in a way that will frighten them, but in a way that will let them know that we're in this thing together. We're in this thing as a world. It's not even just this family. It's not even just this country. The whole world is dealing with this, and we have to navigate it somehow. We keep talking about new normal. The new normal is here to stay. COVID is here to stay. We just keep praying that, okay, we had a nice variant from South Africa. We think that's the end of the road. So just pray that, the variant, subsequent variants will be mild, will continue to be mild. I was reading some article that said that, let me not even go into that Black people have a gene that makes them slightly more resistant to COVID. So one of these, I think Norway or something, have done this big study. So whatever it is, we're praying also. But this new normal, God should just help us all, And as Dr. D said, prayer. This pandemic has almost tried to take away the one weapon we as believers have, But we have to just keep pushing and keep pushing. Yeah.
Sorry,
it's not over till it's over.
Thank you, Dr. Z. Yes,
just
Dr.
one
D.
line. Can I just add one line quickly?
Yes.
As Dr. Zion was talking, I just wanted to throw something out there for people to consider.
Okay.
The Bishop of London appealed to government yesterday that healthcare workers were the same people who fought this pandemic. They were the same people, and they cannot be punishing the same healthcare workers. I was one of the first people, at least where I work, who got vaccinated. I even had my second dose earlier than I should. I believe in vaccination. I took part in vaccination. Our church, I attend a church where a pop-up vaccination center was set up, the first that did not ask questions, that vaccinated people. We had many sessions there. So I'm pro-vaccination, but I'm against coercive or enforced vaccination, and I'm against people getting sacked, people losing their jobs. So there are people out there worried about their jobs. I believe that voices from high places are advocating, and if people have been told to open up and everything should be open, there's no justification for making threats to sack people. Statistically, 30% of Black and African people in this society are essential services workers. Healthcare, cleaning, pottering, driving, things like that. And these are people that we need to be back out there. So if there's anxieties going on, I am believing that good sense will prevail and nobody will lose their jobs because people are anxious about it. The cleaner who cleans the office where I share with people cries to me every day, has been crying to me every day for the last week, asking if we could do some letter for her to say that she's exempt from vaccination, because she's very anxious about losing her job. Some people have been sacked already, people who work for agencies, people who work in care homes. And I pray that somebody somewhere will have the good sense to recall them to their jobs.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Oluyemi Sisi. Puzzle game, that's a good one to engage your children in. That's a very good one. I think we did that at the beginning of the pandemic. That was a good one. But parents, anything you need to do, just do it. Engage your children. But like I think it was Stone that said, don't give up. We can't afford to give up. And as you guys were talking, something occurred to me. The question I was asked, what about if the parent is actually going through, how can they help? I thought that, I think for most of us, especially in my generation, we probably have more resilience than the younger ones. So we're probably able to cope better. I don't know, Dr. Z and Dr. You guys might disagree. But I think at least to a certain extent, we have more resilience and tolerance than the younger ones. So in that way, we can be dealing with, sorting out ourselves and at the same time, trying to help them, I think. Yeah.
I think so too. I think so too.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Dewunmi and Dr. Zion. Again, as I always say, we're going to have you back because we haven't scratched the surface. There's still so many things to talk about, but again, we don't have time. So we'll bring you back to talk about this. But I'm going to get, as I saw some young people on, that I am going to get to come and talk about their COVID experience. I know you guys, I'm going to, as soon as I get off this call, I'm going to be on your case. So you guys better respond and say, yes, Auntie, they're coming. Well, thank you again, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us, rather. And God bless you. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.